50,000 tons. I need you to understand what that number means before we go any further, because everything else I'm about to tell you in the next 15 minutes flows from that single figure. Not dead soldiers, not destroyed tanks, not burned vehicles on a highway somewhere. 50,000 tons of ammunition, gone, not depleted, not degraded, gone. And it happened in 48 hours. I have been analyzing military operations for over 2 decades. I have studied every major conflict since the Gulf War. I have read thousands of post-strike assessments, logistics reports, operational collapse analyses. I thought I had seen the full range of what modern warfare could produce. I was wrong. What Iran executed against the Israeli Northern Front in those 48 hours is not a chapter from any war I have previously studied. It is something new. And if you are watching this channel because you want someone to tell you the truth about what is actually happening, not the sanitized version, not the version that fits a political narrative, then stay with me, because what I am about to walk you through will fundamentally change how you understand this conflict. Here is where we start. The Northern Front, the operational theater defined by the Lebanese border and the Upper Galilee, was not defeated in battle. There was no dramatic engagement, no overwhelming force pushing through defensive lines, no moment of heroic last resistance. What happened was quieter than that. More surgical, more permanent. The artillery batteries that were firing hundreds of rounds per day began rationing to single digits. The armored units that depended on continuous munitions resupply found themselves sitting on positions they could hold only until the last tank round was chambered and fired. The Air Force strike packages that IDF Northern Command had been planning for months were canceled, not because of enemy air defenses, but because the precision munitions those packages required no longer existed in any accessible inventory. The Northern Front did not lose a battle. It lost the ability to fight one. And it lost that ability because 15 ammunition depots, 15 of the most carefully concealed, most heavily protected facilities in Israel's entire military architecture, were destroyed simultaneously across a 48-hour operational window. Facilities whose locations were classified at the highest levels of Israeli operational security. Facilities built underground, camouflaged, dispersed, designed to be invisible from commercial satellite imagery, and indistinguishable from surrounding terrain. Iran found all 15 simultaneously. With targeting precision that post-strike imagery confirms as direct hits on specific structural elements, ventilation shafts, blast door entries, the exact weak points of hardened underground storage design, that is not luck. That is not signals intelligence gathered in the weeks before the campaign. That is a targeting package, years in development, continuously updated, validated against current facility configurations, and executed in a single operational sequence designed to achieve complete ammunition system collapse within a time frame too short for any compensating measure to be implemented. Let me translate 50,000 tons into operational reality, because the abstract weight means nothing until you understand what it actually provided to the forces depending on it. The Northern Front's artillery order of battle includes approximately 72 individual artillery pieces across 12 battalions. At sustained fire rates during active operations, those batteries consume roughly 57,000 rounds per day. The destroyed depot inventory represented approximately 870 days of artillery ammunition at that rate. Not a week's reserve, not a month's buffer, nearly 3 years of sustained fire support capacity concentrated in 15 locations and reduced to burning concrete and secondary detonations in 2 days. Within 36 hours of the destruction assessment being completed, Northern Front artillery was operating under a 90% reduction in daily fire authorization. By hour 48, multiple batteries had received orders to cease fire entirely, pending resupply that the destroyed distribution infrastructure cannot deliver. Now here is what separates this campaign from every interdiction operation I have previously studied, and this is the part that I think the Western analytical community is still struggling to fully absorb. The campaign did not stop at the depots. Strike Window 3, the final phase of the 48-hour operational sequence, did not target more storage facilities. It targeted distribution infrastructure, ammunition transfer points, convoy staging areas, specialized munitions handling equipment, the road and rail connections linking depot locations to forward positions. The logic is devastatingly precise. Destroying the depot inventory is strategically decisive only if you simultaneously destroy the ability to distribute whatever survives. Ammunition that cannot be moved to the weapon that fires it is strategically equivalent to ammunition that does not exist. By the time the third strike window closed, the Northern Front's ammunition supply system had been addressed at every functional layer simultaneously. Strategic reserve destroyed, forward operational buffer destroyed, distribution infrastructure destroyed. There was nothing left to rebuild from. The weapons employed tell their own story about the depth of Iranian operational planning. The combination of Caliber cruise missiles with penetrating warheads and Fateh 110 ballistic missiles with earth-penetrating variants was not chosen for availability. It was chosen for effect. The Caliber's terrain-following flight profile defeats radar-based early warning at long range. The Fateh's ballistic trajectory and terminal velocity provide the kinetic energy required to defeat overhead protection built to resist conventional airburst detonations. Used together against the same target, they present the defending system with simultaneous threats from different flight profiles that cannot be optimally engaged by any single interceptor system. The intercept rates during Strike Window 1 fell well below the levels that would have been required to prevent facility penetration. This was not a gap in Israeli air defense doctrine. It was a capability mismatch specifically engineered by the attacking force. I want to address the American resupply question directly because the framing that has dominated Western coverage, that Washington failed to respond adequately, that alliance commitments proved hollow, misses the operational reality entirely. The United States did not fail to resupply the Northern Front because of a lack of political will. It failed because the operational conditions that Iran created in 48 hours made emergency resupply physically impossible within any timeline relevant to the front's survival. The standard emergency resupply pathway runs through Ben Gurion International Airport for air delivery and through Ashdod and Haifa ports for sea delivery. Ben Gurion's runway was cratered before the depot campaign began. The military airfields with adequate cargo capacity were destroyed in the base strikes that preceded the depot campaign. American military engineers assessed runway repair timelines at a minimum of 14 days under optimal conditions, meaning no follow-on strikes against repair operations, which the operational environment did not provide. The maritime alternatives, beach landing operations, helicopter delivery, improvised offshore transfer, each provide a fraction of a percent of the throughput required to replace 50,000 tons within a militarily relevant time frame. The American response was defeated before it began. Not by American failures in execution, but because the operational environment had been specifically engineered to make execution impossible. Port strikes first, base strikes second, depot strikes third. The sequence was designed to ensure that when the depot destruction created the resupply requirement, the infrastructure needed to execute that resupply had already been eliminated. What this campaign reveals about the structural difference between the two sides is something that Western defense analysis has been systematically reluctant to examine clearly. Every element of Iran's operational campaign, the targeting intelligence, the weapon systems, the planning capacity, the logistics, flows from a foundation built entirely within Iran's own borders, funded by Iran's own resources, subject to no external veto, no supply chain dependency, no political conditionality from a patron whose domestic politics might constrain the level of support available. Israel's position is structurally the opposite. The precision munitions that constitute the most critical element of IDF strike capability flow through American supply chains subject to congressional authorization and export licensing review. The Tamir interceptors that Iron Dome depends on are manufactured under a joint production agreement requiring continuous American industrial participation. The F-35 fleet operational readiness depends on software updates and maintenance support flowing through Lockheed Martin's supply chain infrastructure. Each dependency is individually manageable under normal conditions. Under the conditions Iran has created, where receiving infrastructure has been systematically destroyed and operational consumption exceeds the supply chain's ability to compensate, these dependencies combine into a vulnerability that no amount of tactical skill can overcome. The soldiers holding positions on the Northern Front are not failing because they lack courage or proficiency. They are failing because the logistical foundation that converts those qualities into sustained military capability has been removed from beneath them. The geographic implications of what the ammunition collapse has created are unavoidable in their clarity. The Northern Front represents the approach corridor from Lebanon through which Hezbollah's ground forces, if they choose to advance, now face no adequately armed opposing force for the first time in the current conflict period. Artillery batteries that provided fire suppression across that terrain are silent or rationing to irrelevance. Armor units that constituted the mobile offensive capability are sitting on fixed positions counting down to their last tank round. Anti-tank missile inventory, the systems that gave Israeli infantry the ability to engage fortified positions and enemy armor, was heavily concentrated in the destroyed northern depots and is no longer available in sufficient quantities to change the tactical calculus. The vacuum that has been created is not a weakened front. It is a front that has transitioned from a capable offensive force into a fixed defensive line, with degrading combat power measured on a timeline of days. In Moscow, the strategic reading of what just happened connects directly to Russia's interest in demonstrating that American military guarantees to regional allies cannot be sustained against an adversary that has specifically designed its operational approach to defeat the American resupply response. The caliber transfers that enhanced Iran's penetration capability against hardened underground storage were an investment in producing exactly this kind of result, a result that carries demonstration value extending far beyond the immediate theater. In Beijing, the analytical focus falls on the timeline. 48 hours from first strike to operational collapse, achieved against one of the most capable and best supplied conventional forces in the Middle East. That timeline is a planning data point of enormous significance for every scenario in which Chinese strategists are assessing operations that would trigger American emergency resupply responses. The demonstration that a sophisticated supply interdiction campaign can collapse a front faster than any resupply operation can be organized and executed invalidates a foundational assumption in American alliance management strategy globally. What I keep returning to in analyzing this campaign is the phrase that I used at the beginning: this is something new. Not because the weapons are new, not because the targets are new, not because logistics interdiction as a concept is new, but because the integration of long-duration intelligence collection, precision targeting against hardened underground facilities, simultaneous multi-layer strikes across a complete supply system, and deliberate operational sequencing calibrated to defeat the resupply response before it can be mounted represents a quality of strategic planning that the Western analytical community consistently assessed Iran as incapable of producing. That assessment was wrong. The Northern Front's collapse is the price of that assessment being wrong. 15 depots, 48 hours, 50,000 tons. The front goes dark not in a dramatic last stand, but in the grinding operational reality of batteries firing their last authorized rounds, tank crews sitting immobile on positions they cannot advance from, and strike packages canceled because the munitions they require no longer exist anywhere within reach. That is the verdict. And the question of what comes next, whether Israel can reconstitute from southern reserves before the vacuum produces consequences that cannot be reversed, whether Washington can construct a resupply pathway through an interdiction environment designed to defeat it, whether this is a standalone operation or the opening phase of a systematic campaign to eliminate IDF combat sustainability front by front, that question does not have a comfortable answer, and I will not pretend otherwise.